excited to be here to do
My
this.
name is Laura Foster.
Guitar player extraordinaire slash resident fun guy at Northside Baptist
Tree
Church.
O'Quinn. I'm actually Charlie's cousin.
Bill Baker.
Eddie Baines Blanton. I'm a junior at Lowndes High
Drew
School.
Peterson. I'm a student at Lowndes High School.
All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today. If you can introduce yourself and we'll just keep on going.
My name is Charles Korn. I'm the Associate Pastor of Outreach for First Baptist Church of Ray City.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to have you on today, like I said. And, again, thank you for the opportunity to come up here and interview some of you guys. And I'm telling you, when Mikey approached me with the idea, I was like, you want me to what? Because, that was a different avenue, from going, because I've interviewed so many people at Northside. I was like, that sounds fun. I'll do it. And I'm so glad that I'm getting the chance to do it. So if you could just tell a little bit of your testimony, and then we'll just keep on going with questions.
Absolutely, yeah. So I grew up in what I would consider a nominal Christian home. Mm-hmm. We went to church fairly regularly. It was a Methodist church, but the church was not very deep. My family really wasn't very involved, and by the time I got to high school, we moved, and we kind of dropped out of church altogether, and I got in with a friend group that went to let's just say a very lively Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
And so I got plugged into that church, but I still wasn't a believer, still didn't walk with the Lord. And when I got to college, I had a lot of hard things come my way. Hard more emotionally than anything. Yeah. So I got the opportunity to go to college and play some baseball. And while I was there, you go from a small school where I was the cream of the crop, and I was the starter from freshman on. I got to college, and let's just say some of those boys were pretty good at playing some baseball.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I did not do as well as I had hoped or anticipated, and I got some flack from the coach in a couple different ways. And really just kind of spiraled downhill. I played really, really well, but just never was able to kind of make the cut to get a lot of playing time on our college team. And so anyway, it spiraled me downhill in a pretty hard way. And I had a really close friend who encouraged me, because I got to the point where basically I remember in my dorm room pointing my finger at the sky, pointing my finger at the Lord and saying, like, Lord, if you don't fix this, I'm done with you. I'm done with Christianity. I'm just done with all of it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who encouraged me to go take some time, actually sit down with the Bible. Like I said, I was nominal Christian, so I knew a little bit, but I never actually read the Bible too terribly much. Was a big proponent of Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ when I was walking up to the plate to try to hit a home run. I mean, that kind of Christianity. And anyway, got to actually open the Bible and read it, and the Lord, it was amazing because the Lord really clearly opened my eyes to my own sin, to my need for Him to be my Savior. I was in Psalm 31 looking at the reality of the fact that He is my refuge and my strength, and it's to Him that I run to, not my own strength. And my eyes just kind of opened. I mean, I felt very much kind of like the Paul scenario where the scales fell off my eyes and I saw clearly. And from that moment on, I knew that I was going to serve Him, and that progressed. I ended up getting plugged in with a really solid church. That church helped me see that the Lord had called me to lead, and went to seminary, and now I'm here in lovely old Ray City, Georgia, in the middle of South Georgia.
Yep. And it's so funny to me because I was telling Mikey that my uncle, how this church is lined up exactly with a neighborhood. He lives right down that neighborhood down there.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been trying, I'm like, look, you've got, you can either go to Northside with me, or you got a church literally a minute down the road. Go to one. I know somebody that's there, and now I'm going to know even more people because I'm talking to you guys. So it's like you got a church down there, and I'll even come with you if you want me to for a bit for a service. But like, we've just been trying to get him to go to the church. You know,
yeah.
Little, he can walk. I mean, because he's in one of the first few houses up here.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's
cool.
cool.
He even got to drive.
We have a few people from that neighborhood who literally just walk over here.
Yeah.
So
and we've because I've walked kind of around this area plenty of times. Like we'll come to like Thanksgiving over here at his house, and I'm like, I've always wondered what the inside of this place looks like. You know, because I've said that. Like, I've always wondered what the inside of this church looks like. And,
well, now you know.
Yep, I do now. And because I was like, man, it looks pretty. I remember, because the two things I would notice is the church, and then you got the big, like, I don't know if you'd call them like tree things, like the big. Yeah, I noticed that one would come. Like, that's the two things I would notice coming around.
Yeah.
This neck of the woods, but yeah, just trying to. If my uncle's listening to this, you got some church options.
Yeah.
You might as well come over here. I know the pastors now, so you better just come on. What's been the most, or so you talked about like kind of how you came here, but can you like go into more detail about like how that process went?
Yeah. So basically, like I said, I got plugged in with a really good, really healthy church, and what I mean by healthy is it was a church that really taught the Bible. Mm-hmm. We went in depth with the Bible. The pastor was very discipleship oriented. Mm-hmm. He took me under my wing when I got to that church, and encouraged me to really seek after the Lord, and pressed me into denying sin, to killing sin in my life, but also pressed me into holiness and into living in a way that served and honored Him. And so that pastor was really integral in kind of pointing me into seminary. And I remember making that decision. I remember sitting down with my parents and letting them know, sitting down, we went out to eat and letting them know, like, hey, I've made the decision to go to seminary. And my parents really didn't think anything of it because, again, they were fairly nominal at that time. And that was a big decision for me. And then once I got to seminary, while I was in seminary, I was up in Louisville, Kentucky at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I was a youth pastor in that while I was there also, and had the opportunity to get some experience under my belt. Went through some difficult things at that church, but also some really good things, and it was a great time of learning. Once I left seminary, once I graduated, I had stopped being the youth pastor there so that I could focus on my school so that I could graduated, and it was kind of like, all right, well, where are we going to go? And so my wife and I were really considering going overseas as missionaries, but we came to, I ran across this job post because, again, I was graduated, had my degree, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, ran across this job post for the church, and it was the outreach pastor position. And I was like, dude, this fits everything that one of the things that they wanted was somebody with sports background and an exercise science degree or a sports management degree. That's exactly what I graduated with in my undergrad. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where, like, literally the Lord lined it up perfectly in every single way to say, this is a job that you need to consider.
Right.
Applied, and I mean, basically the rest was history. I was, from what I've learned since the interview process, I was their top candidate the entire time. And the Lord made it very clear on my end, this is where you should be, and this is where you need to go. There wasn't like any voice or anything like that where the Lord said that. It was just very clear every time we came, the peace that He gave, the promptings that I could feel just pushing us in this direction.
Yeah. So how long have you been working up here now? Like, has it been?
About 4.5 years. 4.5 years? We moved here in July of 2019.
Cool. Yeah, like, I think you might have been working like up here like around the same time as kind of like when Pastor Jeff came to Northside for worship. Cause I was trying to keep all that straight. I was kind of like talking with him because over the summer I worked with them and kind of got some hands-on experience, and that was like one of a huge blessing to get to personally know them, as people,
Absolutely.
Not just pastors, but as how they are just as a human being. And one thing was, I think he said that he started coming, like, he worked at Northside like since 2019. I'm like, well, good Lord, if like that's just a few years ago. It's crazy, then I feel like he's been there for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way about you as well. Like, because if you find somebody that fits the bill on that certain position and they fit right in, like they feel like they've been there forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that it's felt like I've been here for, it just feels like just a few months, and it also feels like I've been here for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool.
Like, I haven't been at Northside for I got saved in 2022.
Okay.
And and I've not been there for that long, but it feels like I've been there for like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And I think you get that feeling once you start going through your church, whichever one it is. And you start getting to know people and everything, and good Lord, the people I know now. Like, I was telling Mikey this, I was like, there's so many people that say hey to me in the halls when I'm going to like life group or something. I don't even know who they are because they know me because of the podcast stuff, because it was Pastor Robbie, put it out there.
Yeah.
And said, that, we're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And so they just say hey to me in the hall, and I'm like, hey, who was that? Like,
Trust me, as a
really,
pastor,
really cool.
that happens all the time.
I bet it does. I mean, it's like,
or in the community where I don't know somebody, but they
like,
know me.
Oh, hey, you had a really good sermon. Wait, who was that? So I guess they're listening, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. But what has been the most challenging part about your job?
Probably the multitude of hats that I have to wear. So as the outreach pastor, I handle any kind of outreach missions initiative that we have. So I handle all of our mission trips. I handle all of our and lead all of our outreach stuff. I lead a lot of our discipleship stuff as well. And I also, since I've been here, our youth, our family pastor left to go lead pastor in another church, and since then the church has given me that role also. So I run oversee all of our children's ministry, our youth ministry, our missions, our outreach, a good portion of our discipleship stuff. So I am in a lot of different things.
Yeah, you are.
And it causes me to spin a lot of plates, but the Lord has been kind. None of the plates have fallen. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I could do a little bit better in those areas, but it's been good, and that's the hardest part of what I have to do.
Yeah, it's just balancing that, My gosh, that is a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot to do.
It is a lot, but it's good.
Yeah, because that was one thing I kind of touched on with Mikey a little bit as well. Like, balancing, not with the roles that he has here, but like the different, two different churches in a way. Because he still is going to the north side a little bit, for his family, and then coming here for work and things. And I'm like, how is that balancing it? And, that's one thing that people have told me just in general on this podcast, like, God's just really having to work through me to try to balance whatever that may be, whether it's 4 or 5, 2 things,
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've had to learn too, with how do I balance podcasts with school?
Yep.
Or, podcasts and nonprofit, because I have a nonprofit. Like, how do I balance, all that stuff, and then still focus on God on top of that?
Yeah.
And you have
Absolutely.
to pray about that. But how did you feel when Mikey came on board to help work with you guys?
Honestly, I'll be honest, when he first interviewed and I realized he was 18 years old, I went, ain't no way this kid's going to make it. But I have been so pleased with Mikey, and he has done such a phenomenal job. And once I got to know him through the interview process, because I was a part of the whole process, because he was going to work directly with me.
Right.
I got to know him and realized the maturity level that he has. He has an exceptional maturity level for an 18-year-old. He is exceptionally well thought through, and I have greatly enjoyed getting to know him. And again, like we were just saying, the hardest part of my job is balancing all the things and wearing all the different hats.
Off of you, huh? Yeah.
And he has helped remove some of that. So he has taken over the youth position, and I still have a lot of oversight. I'm still there for a lot of the things that they do, but he has taken on the role of doing more of the administrative stuff, but also of the teaching role. One of the things that I try to do with Mikey is I told him up front whenever we were hiring him, we're hiring him for the youth worker position, but my goal is to train him to be a pastor.
I feel like that's where God's taking him, really.
And absolutely, I would agree. And so that's one of the reasons why, when we meet weekly, we meet for at least an hour each meeting, and those meetings encompass everything from youth work to pastoral ministry. And so I am doing the best that I can to train him in that direction with the little bit that I have to give.
And I know that I remember when I watched him go get commissioned. I was just like in my head, I was like, yeah, go Mikey! I was like so happy for him,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, like, because I remember it was, I think Noah on a Wednesday night, one night, I allowed him to preach a message, and it just like blew me away. Not only like with how mature he is, like you said, but just how well thought through the message was. For how young he is. I mean, shoot, yeah, I don't want to say that like I'm like the best at podcasting, because I'm not, but I've done this enough to where I know how to formulate questions and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, I still stutter over my words 64 episodes in.
Yeah.
But it blows my mind how, again, to how much knowledge he has at such a young age. Like, we were doing, I think maybe like a game, or it was like maybe Bible trivia or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, my gosh, he's getting them all. Like, and that just blew me away because, of how young he is, like I said. Because most kids nowadays, they don't have that knowledge.
I would agree. Yeah.
They really don't. And that's something I need to work on myself is, and I believe it. I believe all of it, but I don't have the knowledge in my head. Because I want to be able to get to the point where I can just spit something out if somebody asks.
Yeah.
Like in school or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And am I there yet? No, absolutely not. And I want to get there.
Mikey would probably also say that he is not there yet either.
What?
He is very, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But he's also got a humility about him as well. And so, just as he has been a blessing for sure to our church.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, it was so funny. I remember I think it might have been when the Northside Student Ministry went to sing at Water Ventures, and we went to see For King Country. I remember he was hanging out with me and my friend Baines, and like he wanted to hang out with us for the day, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, why does he want to hang out with us too? Like, he's got other friends here, but he wants to hang out with us, and and you really get to, he's just a nice person, like a great person to have around.
I would agree.
And in terms of personality and, what he brings. Also, in one awesome thing when it comes to, and I know that you do this as well, but with like, mentoring youth like Northside in here does as well, is, our opinion matters to you guys. And like, because when I worked under Noah or Pastor Jeff, they asked me, for my opinion. Like, they wanted to know, like, I wasn't just there and just a body sitting there. Like, they wanted to know, what do you think? And that means so much, because in like today's, like, the worldly jobs, you got a bunch of youth just working, and their opinion's not heard. Like, they can say, oh yeah, well, I don't like this, but then the boss is like, well, that's just too darn bad. This is how it is, But you may voice your opinion, and something may not come of it, but at least you're heard, and they know that that's either something that's on your mind, and that just makes me feel better.
That's right.
Somebody who's up here and, giving my time, because I was a volunteer at the time. So I was up here just, giving my hours, but, that's just something I just love about, especially here and at Northside as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what has been your favorite part about working here at First Baptist Bay City?
I mean, the purpose for why I was hired was to be to lead our outreach and missions. And that's my heart, is outreach, it's missions, it's seeing people come to a greater understanding of the Lord and of Jesus Christ and what He has done, but it's also of telling people for the first time who Jesus Christ is, what He has done, why His death, His burial, His resurrection, His ascension, why they matter, why His life mattered. And that's probably, that's the thing that I enjoy the most. I enjoy teaching it. I enjoy leading in missions, and the opportunity to connect. One of the people that we connect with is a missionary up in Boston, which I'm fairly certain that Northside does as well. Jonathan Mosley. I've had the opportunity to connect to missionaries over in Hungary and around the world, and it has been just a blessing to be able to connect with those people, to hear the heart and to hear of the gospel going forth. I mean, sometimes it's so easy to get caught in our own bubble,
right? About
like, well, this is what Ray City does, or this is what Christianity looks like in South Georgia. But to see it broad across the entire globe, and to see that Jesus Christ matters, whether you're here in little bitty Ray City in South Georgia, whether you're in Boston, whether you're in China or Budapest or Panama City down in Panama, the gospel is the same.
Yep.
It's the truth of Jesus Christ, his life, death, burial, and resurrection.
Yeah, and it's that's good, really good. And on one thing I've been thinking about as well, and I'd like to, for at least for Northside, I'd like to take more mission trips, here in the U.S. as well, because we're, there's so much going on in the U.S. right now. People need to hear, the gospel. Of course,
Absolutely.
They have more avenues because there's more churches as well. But sometimes, that can be daunting for some. But if we, walk up to them and talk to them, and that sometimes is better because sometimes they don't want to step into a church. But like, man, if they're coming all the way from South Georgia to go to, I don't know, like you said, Boston, for example, they really care. And that really shows because sometimes they hear the word church and they're like, oh no, like, I don't want to step in there. It's like a scary word for them. But if you, it was kind of like what's been on my heart too. Like, and I love the missions that go abroad; they're amazing. But I'd love to see more of a focus in like around the country too.
Yep.
Because like there's so much going on, and people need to hear the goodness of God. Like, of course, everywhere. And I mean, because people are struggling. Like I hear, like people's stories, like at least in my school, like you can be a missionary wherever you're at. Absolutely. And like I'm like, well, there's hope for that. Like, but sometimes they'll listen, sometimes they won't. But as if you spread the gospel, you've done your job. It's just up to them to receive it. Yeah. And that's kind of been a thing I've had to learn. They're not if they reject it, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting Jesus, and that's one thing I've kind of had to learn myself. I'm like, but
that is the hardest portion. That is the hardest part of presenting the gospel. It's the fact that we like to take things personally. Yep. And the reality is that their rejection is not of us. It is of, it is of our Savior. It is of our King and our Lord. And like, we're just ambassadors.
And sometimes, in your head, you just want to be like, here, take a Bible. It's like, but, and like I said, sometimes they just have to accept it. Yeah. You can't make them accept it.
That's right.
But when it comes to questions about our youth, when you look at the youth, do you see hope or you what about the future? And this is, in general. So it can be with the youth group in mind. It can be just in general,
Yeah, so I see hope.
Yeah.
I mean, are there things to worry about? Is there hard stuff in the world? Yeah, but one of the things I really love to do is I love to study not just current stuff, but the history of the church. Yeah. And, I mean, you look through the history of the church throughout the ages, and the church has been in some dark places at times. There's a period of history called the Dark Ages for a reason. Yep. It has been in some hard places, some dark places, and yet the gospel of Jesus Christ has never been extinguished. It has dwindled at times, but then that dwindling always leads to a bonfire that explodes in some kind of revival. And the things that I've read about our current situation, that's what I hear, is that whether that's on college campuses or high school campuses, the generation that's coming is hungry for the Lord.
Definitely.
Because they see darkness all around them, and what they desire is light. Yeah. And that is what we have to present them. Now, they might want to reject it in some way, but at the end of the day, the light of the gospel will shine brightest in the darkness. And so I have hope because I hear of things going on like that, and I know that the gospel will go forth, whether it goes forth in the way that we expect it to or not. Yeah. I mean, you look back at Paul, I'm sure that there were people who are going, man, Paul's arrested. Well, the gospel's done. Yeah. And yet it exploded because of his arrest, because of the letters that he wrote. Yeah. So.
And, like, the thing about it is, I wish that was, that's the stuff I wish got reported on the news instead of, like, all the bad stuff. Why can't we put that out there? Like, one thing that always comes to mind now is, like, the Asbury Revival when you say stuff like that. And that was, like, what was that, 13 days of...
it was something like that, yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. People were coming from all over the country just to see what this was like. I mean, and, you might have had people from different denominations in there, whatever. Well, that didn't matter. You know, people were just worshiping and praising God for what he was doing there.
Yep.
And it was having an outbreak, you know, everywhere. Like, I think even VSU might have done something then. There might have been a few other college campuses that had some smaller stuff going on. So I've seen, like, stuff here and there that's, like that. That's been really encouraging for sure. And then, you know, for me, it's kind of 50-50 because I'll hear that stuff and then I'm in, like, a public school setting and you're like, oh boy, like, you know, these people are gonna, just an example, they're gonna get to vote in like a year. And that's, oh no, you know, like,
absolutely,
you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I definitely do see hope as well, you know, in that regard, but at the same time, we have to, you know, we're kind of on an uphill slope to try to win this generation, like this half of the generation back. It's about split right down the middle. You got one half of the generation's here for it, other half's not, and we got to get more of them on this side over here.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, I think an uphill battle is right. If we get complacent, we've lost them. Yeah. But if we press into it and press into the darkness with the light of the gospel, well, then, again, the light shines the brightest in the darkness. And so we have the opportunity to pull those who are lost in darkness into the great light of Jesus.
Yep. So, you know, young people face a lot of challenges in today's world, whether it be through social media or, you know, school, like we said before, anything like that. What advice would you give to them if they were trying to, you know, came up to you and said, I'm struggling to navigate this world in a biblical way? What would you tell them?
How well do you know the Word? And I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the point is, God has given us everything we need for life and godliness in His Word. And if we're plugged into His Word, then we will learn how to navigate the world and the hard stuff and the darkness around us. And so that would be my thing, especially for a Christian. For a non-Christian, I would approach them with the gospel because they have to accept who Jesus is before they can be changed. I think that's something that the church struggled with for a long time is we wanted to see the change before we presented the gospel, but it's the gospel that has to come before the change. The gospel it's the transformation that comes with Jesus Christ, not the transformation prior to Jesus Christ. And so that's my biggest thing is like if somebody's struggling, God's word is timeless. More than 2,000 years old, written over 1,500 years by, I don't remember exactly, 44, I think, different authors. But I mean, again, timeless by a whole bunch of people over a bunch of different time periods. And it's got a bunch of truth that can guide us, that can lead us, and that it affects and speaks to every avenue of life. Whether it is directly about the way that we use social media or just about the heart that we have behind our use of social media. It affects us, and it can speak into our life in every way.
Because that when you bring that up, it makes me think of like there's good and bad on social media for both. Like, because you can use it in a really powerful way to reach a bunch of people. Like, you know, that's how I promote these podcasts was, you know, through social media, and it gets these links out and here, you know, because you never know who's going to click on them. You're like, what is this? I need to, you know, check it out maybe. Because, you know, one thing I was discussing with somebody, I don't remember who it was, but my podcast, unless you like know what it's about, it doesn't say Christianity in the title. It just says the Young Minds Podcast. So what is this about? So then they have to click on an episode to figure it out, and so they get the gospel through that, through you know, hear his testimony. Maybe that person's going through it. Like, and I'm not saying that like you have to have kind of a title like mine, you know, but I just think it helps. So that way, and I'm not like trying to trick people in any way, but it gets people intrigued. Yeah, you know, because
it's another form of. It's just another form of evangelism, you know. I mean, one of my favorite forms of evangelism is to use service. To serve somebody in some way, and then you use that as a platform to share the gospel. Yes. And it's a similar idea of, you know, you're trying to help, and in the midst of that, you know, allowing people to think through critical things. The gospel is presented.
Yeah, like I was, you know, I just did my first like first responders event at the Valdosta Police Department.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, and it was maybe like a couple of days ago actually, and one of the cops that I do know, he goes to Northside, and his name's Kyle Salter, and he's a Christian. He's been on this podcast before. But, it's hard for him because he can't exactly share his faith, even though he'd love to. He can't exactly. But he's done some small stuff, like when he writes Merry Christmas, he puts Christ in all caps. But, one of the things that, because I'm an outside source, I'm not a policeman, of course, so I brought little witness cards to that event, and I stuck them everywhere, around the tables.
Yeah.
And I left them there so people can pick them up. And there's even like a website link on the back that's, I didn't set it up, I got them from somebody, but it's more resources.
Yeah.
So, like, doing small stuff like that, you never know how big of an impact that's going to have. I mean, you might have just gave a witness card to the next, like, C.S. Lewis. Like,
that's right.
You don't know. And so I think that's just, like, really cool. And we won't know until we get, the full effect, until we get to heaven. Like,
that's right.
Like this podcast, I've seen it. It's gone to 11 countries. I don't know who's all listening to it, though.
Yeah,
I won't know until we get to heaven.
I would agree. Yeah, that's good.
But, that's all the questions I have. But do you have any, like, final thoughts or words of encouragement or anything that you might want to add?
I think that, just to kind of as a final thought, I think that the focus that we need to have for the next generation, the thing that we need to encourage our youth with is that the gospel is truth, that it matters, and that Jesus Christ loves them and died for them so that they may have life through His name and through what He has done by living a life perfect for us so that we could find hope in Him through the fact that He has conquered death so that we may have eternal life. I think that's the greatest hope that we can give people. Yeah. I appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for the opportunity. Like I said, and when I first started this, I didn't expect. I didn't even expect to be interviewing people at Northside, let alone another church. So I am so thankful for you, and thank you for all you do here to help our youth and to pour into Mikey like you do. It's amazing to see, and I just thank you so much for your time.
You are welcome. Thank you, Charlie.
Of course. With another episode of the Young Minds Podcast coming to a close, I just want to remind you that you are never alone and faith is action. So let's get out there.